Thank you for coming to our community again. There are two issues that I believe you recently modified, and I'd like to know why they were modified, and the two issues are the state bank and fracking, which about this community is very, very important.
So I haven't modified my positions on that, right? So I am supportive in concept of a state bank. Right, but we have to make it work, right? Part of this is right. I've always been the money guy, right? And I want all the information so that people have, right? So some of you know that we passed the legalization of recreational cannabis. The initiative was deficient in two areas. Right? It didn't address tax administration. So here you have individuals who want to comply with the law, but because the initiative didn't say what to do with tax administration, California state government puts them in harm's way. Fiona Ma, who I'm supporting to be my successor as state treasurer, is most supportive, right? On certain days in her districts, you can pay your tax obligations for cannabis into the first district. George Runner, the conservative Republican, sometimes in various offices, they will accept it. Jerome Horton, the board member for this district, does not accept it. And Diane Harkey, who represents further south, does not accept it. So if you're a business, right, and they're frustrated, we say, we want to pay our taxes. They can't pay their taxes, and we put them in criminal jeopardy. On banking, right, I proposed, and we're doing the research, and in the next couple of weeks, we're going out for our RFI into looking at operationally how we run a state bank, right? Because people think you just run a bank. You don't run a bank, right? There's a lot of complexity to run a bank. Now, I know and I am as upset as many of you are in this room with the way a lot of the big commercial banks have operated, right? They took us and placed us in jeopardy during that last recession. Part of that was that law, right? People's greed. They took excessive risk. They socialized the risk. They made us, the taxpayers, cover those who were greedy, right? That's wrong. But I want to make sure that because we're mad at greed, that we don't create a bank that operates properly, right? Because I'll hear from people, John, let's start a bank. I said, okay, I'm into it. Let's look at the structure. Let's look at the costs. What are we going to invest in? We're going to invest in student loans. I said, be careful. Be careful. Anybody know what happened with the state student loan portfolio? It blew up, right? It blew up. Said, John, invest in mortgages. What happened to the state's portfolio during the recession? It went under. It went under, right? People will compare us to North Dakota, right? There's good lessons to be learned from North Dakota, right? But North Dakota took over 2 decades for that bank to break even. Okay, so let's understand, right? People are talking about we're going to make a lot of money right away. No, right? It doesn't mean you don't do it, right? But let's just be careful about how we finance it. And remember, we have to create a whole institution, right? Because if we're going to operate like other banks, or how do we design our bank, right? Is the state going to be the chief bank of banks, like North Dakota, right? They don't operate like a normal branch bank, right? They're a bank of banks, right? So they use other banks, right? So for some of us who talk about, we don't like the big banks, right? They use other banks, so we're going to have to decide which other banks, if we create a state bank, we're going to use. We have to decide whether we're going to take a depository function. We have to decide how much we're going to pay for it, right? Because it will cost a lot of money to capitalize it. And then we have to decide who is going to pay if the bank gets into financial trouble? Now, some of you were mad at me. A lot of Californians were mad at me during the last recession when I was trying to protect all of us. If you remember 2009, the state, I was your state controller, right? And so you used to get checks with my signature. And in February of 2009, I held back your tax refunds for 23 days. So I got a lot of nasty notes. I wanted it in public and people were screaming at me. I had somebody one time who was so mad at a legal function in Santa Monica, the spit was just flying into my face, right? It's like, what are you doing? You know, I'm struggling. I said, I apologize, I understand, right? But we got our math wrong, right? I had $6 billion, or I had less than $6 billion, but with expected revenue, $6 billion in February of 2009 to pay $10 billion worth of bills. Right, now let's take a whole bunch of zeros. Imagine you have $60,000 and you have $100,000 worth of bills. You have to pay your education payment. You have to pay your health care payment. You have to pay your mortgage. Which one do you want to default on? Right, that's why I didn't have the money to pay tax refunds. So I told people in advance, if they don't fix this budget, right, I'm going to have to take some action. Do you remember later on that year? I had to issue 450,000 IOUs to the tune of $2.6 billion. Right? People were comparing us to Greece. People were comparing us to Puerto Rico. We're not Greece or Puerto Rico, right? Because I handled the money. The ratings agencies said 5 times, right? They normally don't recognize controllers, right? But credit rating agencies analyze financial management of states, right? And they said, we like the way the controller handles money. I told it straight, right? So, yes, we want to get to that place, but why I raised that point? Because if we had a state bank during that time, we would have run out of money, right? We would have defaulted on our student loan portfolio. We would have defaulted on our mortgage portfolio. So yes, I'm going to push hard. We want to work it, but I want to make sure that when we hit the next recession, our state bank doesn't blow up.
All right. Thank you. We'll get back to fracking after